Hey there, welcome to Killer POV episode 26. I'm one of your co-hosts, Rob G from FEARnet and Icons of Fright. Sitting with me as always is Rebekah McKendry from Fangoria.
Holy shit, have we done 26 episodes?
26.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Hi,
How
how you
long
doing
can we
tonight?
keep talking before we have to introduce our
I
other
don't think we
co-host?
should introduce him. Let me
Really?
tell
Should
you
we just
about
keep-
my day.
Oh yeah, tell me about your
I got up and I brushed my teeth and then I had a piece of toast.
Wait a minute, can I introduce?
There he is.
I missed 3 of those episodes, I believe.
3. That's
3
true.
good ones.
You're a slacker.
So I've only been there for 23.
I only
Michael
missed-
Jordan's number.
I missed
Brad
one
Mesca.
and I think I was giving birth, so I had like a
you
free out.
You have a valid excuse.
Yeah.
Oh, the
And I think I was back the next week, which just makes me really cool.
Yeah. The interrupter, by the way, is Elric Kane of Inside Horror, New Zealand, and drinker of my beer every week.
That's me.
Every week.
Yeah.
Tick,
I
tick.
never drink beer with you guys, so one week I'm just bringing like something crazy and we're all doing. I'm bringing crank. I don't know where to get crank,
Wow.
but we're all doing crank
All
on the
right,
air.
whatever.
I brought heroin.
Oh, hey.
This show is just going to be a
What-
series of groans
What a
and
great lead
drooling.
into our guests. He's ready to party. We have a very special guest, a good friend of all of ours, somebody we've known for a while that's done quite a number of pictures you guys have all seen.
Yes.
Darren Lynn Bousman.
Hello.
What's up,
How is
man?
everyone out there?
Yeah. Director
Good
of
times.
Saw 2, 3, and 4, Repo the Genetic Opera, 11, 11, 11, which I rather like a lot, by the way. Just so you know.
You're the one dude.
I'm one
You're
of
the
the
I
one-
actually
you're the one-
like it as well.
that blows
the
my mind.
Barrens, the
It-
Barrens, and
Yes.
and Mother's Day, which ties into our topic, which is home invasion.
You
That's
left
what-
out Devil's Carnival, which is one of my favorites.
I did, but yeah, I was saying, well, all right, I'm going to use the movies excuse, and that's more of a series.
A series
There
of
you go.
vignettes.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
A very
I
long,
still
short
left
film.
it out.
That doesn't, you know what? Just one quick comment on your films because I do like all of them, including 11, 11, 11. But one day, I would give anything if you would make a movie with even a remotely happy ending, or even
you know
remotely
what?
upbeat.
I have been beat down now, and all my movies now have a happy ending because I feel that I think it's cool to end movies the way that I do, but I don't know if mainstream really gets behind those type of movies
See, but
as much.
does it affect you? Because obviously you have to watch them like a million times when you're like editing and putting together.
I just
Are you
like-
just like desensitized to that's just like the way the story has to end?
No, it's like, I always talk about movies and roller coasters. The best roller coasters are the ones that end at a huge thrill, not the ones that end, you have the huge thrill and then you have a minute and a half before you get back into the station, because that's what you remember. You remember how it ends. And so to me, I just like ending them more like a punch in the balls, because it gives you something to talk about as opposed to that slow, tracking back into the station after your roller coaster's over. The thrill is done. So
Was Last House on the Left a big influence on you? Because I always thought of that
influence
on your work. Okay,
Yeah,
so
the
that's the cue.
absolute-
Okay, I should have known.
Yeah, that was the first movie that I saw as a kid. I think one of the first horror movies. My brother, my brother showed me two. I'll never forget this. My kind of first foray into horror. He showed me a double bill. He had two things. And he goes, "All right, we're gonna watch Cannibal Holocaust and Last House on the Left." And let's cut to I'm in 4th grade going into 5th grade.
Oh.
And Cannibal Holocaust was really hard for me to handle for numerous reasons. But Last House on the Left, I just loved it. And you know what it was? And I always talk about this. It's one moment that made me love it, and why I think it has a rewatch value that I keep watching it over and over again. Is that one moment where Krug and everyone, they've just finished carving their name into the girl, and they have blood all over their hands, and they stop for like 1 minute, and they look down, and this beautiful music comes up, and they're disgusted by their actions, and you see them
Yes.
all look at each other and like, what did we just do? And then at that moment, you see the defiant turn in all of them. We're like, we have to finish this. And just that one moment, and I think maybe this goes to my ending movies like this, that when you give a humanistic moment to killers, to me, that's the most disturbing thing you can do. And, bad people aren't always bad. Good people aren't always good. And it's that shade of gray. And I think I love ending movies with that kind of gray, overcast sky, because that's, in my mind, how real life is, as opposed to the, rainbows and kittens and all of that other.
How Rob wants every film to end.
Yeah.
Rainbows and kittens.
I remember
every film.
I think
Unicorns.
if I remember when I think I showed you Mother's Day, and you harped on the end. That was the thing. If I remember correctly, it was like you said the same thing.
You analyzed my review very distinctly because I remember us having a very in-depth conversation, and I didn't give you a bad review, but I wouldn't say it was totally positive either. It made me. I like Mother's Day a lot, mainly because of the acting. I like all the actors in it, but it's not something I haven't seen it since that one time you showed it to me because I can't bring myself to go through it again. You know, it's tough. But in the same regard, the same compliment I gave you is, but I've never watched Requiem for a Dream again either, which I know is one of your favorite movies.
It is.
Like, saw it once, I love it. I own it. It's on my DVD shelf. I'll never freaking watch it.
I have so many like that. Like I own Serbian film. Martyrs is another one.
Martyrs,
I will never watch those films again. Ever.
Or Inside, or any of that. Yeah.
I mean, Inside
once
I would.
Enough.
Inside I would because there was enough artistry, but I agree. There's something about powerful, disturbing films sometimes that you don't want to rewatch. It affected you, and maybe you don't want to feel that way again.
But why did I buy it?
Yeah, I own everything you just named.
Yeah.
Inside, Martyrs. I think I've only watched them once.
It's like I own Cannibal Apocalypse or Cannibal Holocaust.
Irreversible is one that I won't watch again.
Yeah.
Same. I saw it in a theater, and I think that, and you know what? It's not even, to me, it's not even about I don't want to be disturbed or whatever again. It's that the feeling I felt watching Irreversible was so raw and so powerful and so unnerving. I don't want to watch it again because if it doesn't live up to it the second time, I want to remember how I felt when I left that and have those memories of that movie, as opposed to watching it again and picking it apart and watching the fire hydrant so the guy gets his head. I don't want to see behind the curtain on that. There's some movies I just want to leave them alone. Same thing with Amelie. I won't watch Amelie again. Yeah. And it was a magic. I remember when I saw Amelie, it was the first time I just moved to Los Angeles, and I went down. I was driving down, and I saw it at one of the Limleys, and it was amazing. It was like me and 6 people in the theater, and I just got in. I was like, "This is an amazing experience." It was the middle of the afternoon, and I walked away, literally like skipping and like whistling. And I won't watch the movie again because I don't want anything to challenge how I remember when I saw it. And I think that's what horror movies are to me as well. A lot of my favorite films I won't watch again.
Yeah, I find myself collecting them and not rewatching them.
Yeah.
Like, because you love them. Possession was that way for me. Like, we don't go a show without me mentioning that film, but it really was. I didn't actually want to ever rewatch it. I always talk about it.
Possession.
But I never wanted to rewatch it. And when it came back to theatrical, they were all going, and I almost didn't want to go because I had thought about it for 15 years, loved it so much, knew it was my favorite movie. I knew no one else had seen it.
Print. You couldn't resist.
And I can resist, but I kind of wish I hadn't because it had a different power, but it wasn't the same kind of power.
I have this thing now recently that I've tried to go back and watch a lot of the memories of my 80s films. Like I have all these great memories with my dad watching these 80s films, and I stopped recently for this exact reason. I watched Highlander again, and I remember I loved that movie as a kid. It was awesome. It was magical. It was fantastical. And I watched it again, and I just kind of scratched my head. And I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of hate for saying that. But if you rewatch it again, there's some ridiculous things in it that never would pass now. And I think that there was a time when you watch those movies out of the 80s or 70s, they worked for their time and they were magical for their time. But now with the inundation of all the graphics that we're used to and this distractions that we have at our fingertips, what used to be cool is not so cool anymore.
I had that with The Gate. I saw a 35 millimeter print of The Gate a couple of years ago. They did it at Cinefamily, and they had the director on Skype and everything, and I was so excited. And then I watched it, and I was like, man, this film is just not good.
Don't knock my memory of The Gate.
Oh, I'm telling you, but you know what the coolest thing about Darren is? You know how a couple of weeks ago you guys got all grumpy at me because me and the guest kept talking about Jesus Christ Superstar?
Hell yeah.
We didn't get grumpy. Come on.
I was just
a huge fan.
No, he's the reason it came up because you brought him Ted Kotcheff to
I brought Ted.
You told that story.
I told the story about the comedian Chris D'Elia.
I maybe have a handful of people that I would geek out over, and they're not the Al Pacinos or the De Niro's or all that. Those are cool. If I saw them, I'd smile and I'd get excited. But then there's people that I literally get tongue-tied and would freak out over, and one of them is Ted Neely from Jesus Christ Superstar. It is a movie that I grew up on, and that is a movie I've seen about 6,000 times. And
I asked him trivia on it. He can name the lyrics.
Oh, yeah. I know.
He passes.
I've seen...
All right, go to town, guys. The stage is yours.
I will start breaking out before the end of this movie. But no, I got to become friends with a guy, and I brought him to a Jump Cut, and I had the biggest geek out moment of my life. Like I was sitting there, and I was so nervous. I was like talking in Jesus Christ Superstar lyrics, and I was like, "Oh, dude, shut up! You sounded like an idiot." I'm sitting across this thing from Jesus. It was awesome.
He was pretty cool.
He was great.
He seemed like a cool dude.
And I saw Jesus Christ Superstar at the Chinese on a new 35 millimeter print last week with the cast. It was awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
That anomaly. That's what your takeaways are today.
I know.
I'll bring it back home. Fat Girl. I would never watch again.
Oh, yeah.
Is that technically a horror movie?
Fat
Girl.
It ends,
I haven't seen that.
It ends as a horror
French.
film.
It's directed by Catherine Breillat, something like that.
Criterion put that out? Is that the one I'm thinking of? Yeah.
Really intense. I'll consider it like Irreversible, where it's questionably, you'll like me for this one, Rob, questionably a horror film.
There we go.
But it's got enough horror elements that I definitely think it fits into the so disturbing I will never watch it again. But for some reason, I own it with all the special features.
It's got a building sense of dread. It's a coming of age movie for the first 3 quarters, and the last quarter is almost like one of the sisters imagining. It could be imagining. It could be really happening to her. A kind of a rape scenario where
couple of them.
Yeah, and it's pretty intense. But it is. It could be. I think it fits into French extremism. I don't know if that is horror or not. I don't think Inside isn't that.
I want to say
2001.
2001.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
And it's got the girl from Rubber as the older sister who's just ridiculously attractive, like the hottest girl on the planet.
But that's where
that's a different show.
She was where it stopped being the coming of age film for me because it was the whole thing with the anal sex, and then it just got weird.
Right. That was the coming.
That was like the turning point.
Wow.
Yes, I said anal sex.
Wow.
So. And I said coming. In quick succession.
Is there that movie that you defended and you remember very strongly? It's like, this is a scary movie. This is the most extreme. And then you watch it again, you're like, this is terrible.
I wrote the best Shining review of The Divide 2 years ago. And at the time...
Okay, I thought you were going to start talking shit on The Shining. I was going to have to leave. Okay.
Yeah, me too. Matthew Curry Holmes, if you're listening, he doesn't like The Shining, and I don't even know if we can stay friends. Matthew Curry Holmes does not like The Shining.
Well, that's okay. He's giving me notes on my
insanity.
film that I don't agree with.
Insanity.
So, yeah.
All right, sorry, go ahead on
The Divide, it was the one... Why can't I remember who directed
Michael
it?
Biehn.
It was Michael
Biehn.
Starred in it and everything. And it was the one about the apocalypse happened, but the apocalypse wasn't the important part. It was a group of people in the bunker.
Improving.
Yeah, improving, pretty much. And the first time I saw it at a press screening, and it was very dark, and I was pretty much in there by myself because I went to like the 10 a.m. press screening when none of the other journalists come. And it really affected me. And I was like, man, this is intense. And I think I actually like teared up at one point, and I left with just this feeling of just dread and, what a good film does, like where I left and I was thinking about it all day and everything. And I went home and I wrote this Shining review about it where I talked about how intense and how powerful it was. And then the second time I watched it, I was like, this is just a group of people in the room improvising, just trying to be as extreme as possible and be cruel to the audience.
Yeah.
And it made me rethink my review. Of course, I wasn't going to go back and rewrite it or anything. But yeah, that was my one where I was kind of like, it took 2 months for me to digest. And then I watched it when it came out to DVD. And then I was like, it's not what
But your
I
first
thought.
reaction is the important one. I mean, it is. I mean, depending on when you see something, I think that a movie can only be seen for the first time once, right? So I feel like that's a very important reaction. Some movies do get better with time. Some movies with like twist endings, you'll only ever really need to watch once. Once you know where it's going. To me, Usual Suspects, as great as it's made, I probably don't need to watch it again once I know that twist. Maybe one other time to see how clever it is. But after that, for me, one was House. And I'll only say, and it's not a bad movie by any means. It's actually quite a fun movie.
Is this House the 80s or like House
Steve Miner?
Yeah.
Yes, Steve Miner. In New Zealand, for whatever reason, the marketing campaign that came to us was that this is the scariest movie ever made. Like that, there's never been a scary movie in the house, and I was terrified to even put it in the player. Like that's how scared I was. And I remember watching it, and I remember I was shit your pants scary. The parts, specifically the parts with the guy from Night Court as a Vietnam vet skeleton. I remember that was so scary, and I remember watching it maybe a few years ago and just putting on and going, "Oh wow, this is really, really silly." Like it's a comedy.
It's a comedy,
a broad comedy. But I was so scared when I was young, and I can't. And you look back and go, "Oh wow, that's interesting."
That's
memories
weird,
of something
because it was marketed as a comedy here.
See, not at all. In New Zealand, I remember them saying this is literally the scariest film.
Like the tagline was "Ding dong, you're dead."
Ding dong,
but it
you're
had
dead.
this little like floating
had the skeleton
hand.
touching the bottom.
That's great.
Yeah.
And for me, it was the scariest movie at that point.
I'll have to think about that because I can't remember one that I rewatched recently that didn't hold up. I'm trying to think. Carry on.
Yeah. I mean,
we shall.
I mean, I think that's the thing about going back into your memories. That otherwise, and this ties into what we often start with, like what we've been watching lately. A couple nights ago, we played Trancers and Night of the Comet at Jump Cut through Mike Williamson.
Couple nights?
And
it was last night. Don't use Becca math.
Whatever.
It's mine.
Well, if you were listening to this on Friday, the live show on Friday. No, I'm just but you know what? It really actually brought something really home to me about modern genre cinema, and it's this. I was watching Night of the Comet, and I'm just sitting there, and I kept turning to Becca's husband, and I said, dude, do you remember the last time you saw a genre film where you fucking loved the characters? Didn't like them, didn't think they were nice. You fucking loved them. Think about, and I'm watching Night of the Comet going, I don't know if there's two more likable humans, and I'm watching it going, I haven't felt this way for a long time. I don't know, like I'm thinking the new Evil Dead remake, I was on the side that actually enjoyed themselves. A lot of people didn't like that film. I had a good time, but then I'm thinking about it now going, oh, but I didn't care for any of the characters at all.
No. I liked the effects and I liked the scares.
One guy. I liked the nerdy guy, that.
Yeah, but the guy with the long hair.
The guy who got the most punishment.
He was the fun.
But I didn't love him. And I was thinking about this idea of loving characters. And I think the difference is when we were all growing up in the 80s, like Night of the Creeps, you love those kids. You love Tom Atkins.
Dave came home that night and talked for an hour to me about how we need to make a movie like that. Why doesn't anybody make movies like that anymore?
And Trancers even, which is a movie I didn't have fond memories of at all. By the end, I'm like, oh, you just love Jack Death.
I think that's what we were talking about before we started recording today, is that now I think that movies change, based on what's around. Like right now, because of technology and the distractions we have, it takes a lot more to keep an audience engaged. Back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, you can have great characters. You can spend time with these characters. Mm-hmm. Now you got to have explosions. You got to have aliens invading. You got to have massive fights and all that. I don't think that back then that necessarily mattered as much.
Right.
And now it's how I think mainstream judges movies. And it's how big the explosions are, how cool Superman's fights are. It's no longer about the relationship between, the characters. It's about everything that surrounds them. It's about the glitz and glamour. And I think that's where movies have taken a step back, is because we expect this glitz and glamour now.
Where does that, because you've had a lot more experience than me going up the whole chain of command of how to get a movie made with a studio. Where is that happening? Is that coming from the fans? Is it coming from the middle America that people give, or is it coming from the top?
That people are getting, or
in my self-deprecating self, maybe I'm not the right person to ask, because I did go up and then I went right back. I saw it out there. I know. Okay. This is the beginning of horror.
All of the lights outside the studio just went out, by the way. So the only thing with the lights on in the entire building now is our studio. I'm waiting for things to start like banging on the windows. Sorry to interrupt, Darren.
And he's making a found footage film on his phone about to be killed.
We're back on.
Okay.
No, but maybe I'm the wrong person just for this exact reason, because I don't know. Because I thought I did. It is harder, because I think when I started in like 2004, 2005, you had a good script. And if you had a good script and you had some, a good storytelling, it was very easy to get your movie in theaters. I say easy if you had people that believed in it. Now, great movies, great films are not going to theaters. They're going straight to the VOD, and that's become the new model. I think the ones that you're seeing released are these bigger tentpole movies, the more extravaganza films. So I don't know. I haven't had one of those big extravaganza films or, the 3,000 screen releases for about 5 years. And I think because the movies I gravitate towards now are the smaller things, the things that I grew up with loving. The more weird and macabre, like things like Repo is what I love, which is a la Rocky Horror Picture Show or things like that, Phantom of the Paradise. And I think that those are the things that speak to me, and these big budget. I don't even know what to do. I wouldn't know how to do one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and clearly, people like what I was just saying about Night of the Comet. People do feel that way, obviously, about Repo. It's a cult film for a reason. And so, but I just think it's something that I often wonder: did it start with the change where bureaucrats and business MBAs started taking over the studios, or did it actually just come from something audiences wanted? When did that shift just really throws me, because watching some of these films, I don't think it's looking at it through rosy-colored glasses. I really do think it's a fundamental change in character.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think marketing is a huge part of it. Is that I don't know if we realize how much that we're, I want to say brainwashed, but you drive down the street and you're told what's cool. You see the billboard ads and say, go see this movie, go see this movie.
You're next.
Yeah, and then you see the trailers and it's saying, go see this movie, go see this movie. And I think that you're kind of told what to do and told what to see. I think if they shifted that and said, go see this small little whatever, and sometimes it does happen. You get these like Beasts of Southern Wild, I think that's the name of it.
Beasts of Southern Wild.
Beasts of Southern Wild. That was a really small kind of intimate film, which I'm glad actually got some play. But I think a lot of it is this mass marketing machine. It's a machine.
But as soon as it becomes a mass marketing machine, it's not a small film anymore, is it? Because if you think everybody says Insidious was made for $800,000. Well, maybe the movie was, but the marketing campaign was millions. And as soon as you do that, it's no longer a small film. It's a huge giant.
Right.
Does it change your goals as a filmmaker, like the kind of story you want to tell, knowing that the chances are very high that they're going to be aiming just for VOD or just for that platform?
It's hard now, because I think the longer I've been in the industry, the more I see how the business side of it works. And you got to think that, you saw 2, for example, or saw 3, you're in the $2 to $5 million range. So you make a $5 million movie, and usually they have to put double that in P&A. So you have to put $10 million in P&A. So now you're at $15 million to see a profit. And, so you're looking at, an investor looks at a risk. You have to put $15 million to see $1 worth of gross, or do I want to put it straight to video and DVD, where I'm not putting that $10 million in P&A and I'm hitting profit almost immediately on the movie? And so it is hard. It's extremely hard because I understand the business side of it, and sometimes it makes more sense to release things straight to video. Are you really going to take that $20-30 million P&A risk? And I think it's becoming harder and harder to get people out of their house. We were just talking. You just got a new great entertainment system.
3D TV. Giant. I don't want to leave the house now.
And that's the same with me.
This will be the last episode of Killer POV, so Rob can watch TV.
I have built myself a compound where I literally don't want to leave. And I built myself a little small movie theater in my house, and I don't want to leave. And it takes a lot for me to get out of the house. And so I think that I understand the business now. There's a lot of people like me that don't want to leave and go see movies. And so why not? I mean, I think 90% of what I watch is on Netflix or iTunes now. Right.
Me too. But I am so confused about how people make money off of VOD. Because, I mean, if you make, let's say you make a $500,000 movie. Let's say that you get a $50,000 MG attached to that. You're going to get like 12 cents a click off VOD.
It's really, really hard. I think that... I was lucky on Devil's Carnival. We did this with Devil's Carnival. On Devil's Carnival, we actually made the formula. We four-walled a bunch of theaters, and then we basically have lived on DVD and streaming and all of that. Luckily, we had an audience behind us. We had the Repo audience behind us, so you're going to get a lot of people over there. But if you are, some Tom, Dick, or Harry just making your first horror film trying to sell it, the odds are it's going to be very, 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 very hard to see that. We heard the numbers when we first started touring around, listening to a lot of these people give us estimates of what it would be on VOD, and it's disheartening. You spend years of your life working on something, and every million people you get a check for $5. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know that for Hulu, if you have a film on Hulu, it averages between 10 and 12 cents per watch.
Yeah, we started on Hulu. That's how it's.
So, I mean, you figure you have to get like 25 people to watch. You've barely made $3.
On a big budget blockbuster, it makes a lot of sense because you exploit the theatrical change, you exploit the rental change. And then by the time you get there, you've already exploited all these other markets. So it's just one of the things. But if that's what you're planning on going to, it's hard.
Yeah.
Why are they aiming for that then? If it's that difficult to make money, I mean, it's just because it avoids
theaters
marketing.
Are expensive.
And theaters.
I mean, it's becoming. Steven Spielberg wrote this amazing. I don't know if you guys read it. That great article about the state of cinema. And I think that he is correct on what he's saying, that I think you're going to see less and less movies going theatrical. It's going to be the big extravaganza. It's going to be a lot more expensive to see a movie, and everything else is going to have to live on the internet. You know what? I'm wondering, though, because I think 95% of what I watch now is on Netflix and whatever. And I think that now that Netflix is getting more subscribers and more people, maybe the financials are going to change. I don't know. I mean, I've been lucky to not have to worry about that, but I mean, it's hard. It's hard for film. It's a lot harder now, I think, for filmmakers to get. It's not harder to make movies. It's a lot easier to make movies now. I mean, maybe that's the problem. It's so easy to make a movie now. There's no over-inundation of these type of movies on all of these platforms.
It's getting saturated. But I mean, there has to be some type of financial incentive because, I mean, if you're looking at something like the Eli Roth TV show, the name is escaping me. Hemlock Grove. Thank you. Where, they got renewed for a new season and it's just playing on Netflix. So
and no one's ever made it through the whole first episode.
I fell asleep.
No one. Everyone tells us the same story. They
all fell asleep. Yeah. It's like a narcotic. I might make my daughter watch it when I can't get her to sleep one night. Oh, honey, just sit down and watch this. So, But yet that got picked up for another season. So there must be some type of financial gain involved in it.
The one thing that's striking, the one scary part of this for film to me is that it's actually back to front. I think I could go see, I'd rather watch Iron Man 3 at home on a TV where I don't care, and I'd rather go to that small indie comedy and watch with a group of people reacting. And obviously at Jump Cut, we're lucky it's a small space, but at least watching a 60mm or whatever it is, I always like the movie more just because there's people around who appreciate it.
I think that when we were all started going to movies when we were kids, it was an experience. It was a thing. You would go and you get a bucket of popcorn, you'd sit with like-minded people and you'd laugh and you'd cry and you do whatever. It's lost that. It's become a machine and it's become very unpersonable. And I think that, again, my favorite movies now are ones that there is, whether it be the new Bev or anything like that, where there's an experience around it. Right. Hence why I think I gravitate to things like Rocky Horror Picture Show or The Room or Birdemic or any of these other things. You go see it and it's fun. And I think that filmmakers, I wish, would consider more about the experience of seeing their movie as well. And how do you make that an experience? And those, I mean, if you've never seen Rocky Horror in the theater, go see it because that's how I think movies should be seen. It's fun. It's a community.
I was president of my fan club in college, the Rocky Horror fan club. And I was actually, I told you I have a musical theater background. I was Magenta on a tour. So.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
My respect level just went higher.
You're kidding. Yeah. We did an East Coast tour. I played Magenta in the Rocky Horror Show. It was the musical version. So,
well, I mean, and again, I think that's why I would love to keep doing what, I've started doing, is to make movies that I want to make and make the experience, make going to the theater part of what you're doing. So I think people have forgotten about that. They do the movie and they churn it out and that they move on to the next one. But it's I think it was about Rocky, which is so amazing. It's a living, breathing, constant changing piece of art because whoever sees it, however they act it out in front of the screen or whatever they call back, it's always changing. That means that's never complete. That movie is always growing.
And I love that it's so, I always called it rhizomatic, where it's like roots spreading out, where I would travel to the show in Vancouver to see them do it. And I would hear one callback line and then I'd bring it back to my troupe in DC. And then somebody would go travel to Canada and do it again. And it was just...
That's how in my mind these little movies are going to keep staying in the theaters and doing it, is that you're going to have a community that supports them and wants to be there. What's a reason for me to go see a movie in a theater if 2 weeks later I know it's going to be on iTunes? I have no incentive. Am I going to pay to park my car and sit with a bunch of assholes on their cell phone who are going to be talking and pay $15 for popcorn when I can do that exact same thing without being around my wife and my dogs, not have to pay the $15 for popcorn? Something has got to get me out of my ass because I'm lazy. I'm the laziest person I know. Right. And for me to actually get up and go, it's got to incentivize me. And that's why... I wish more theaters or filmmakers would consider the part of actually viewing the movie and making that part of the process as well.
And horror's I had a long history of that. I remember loving the William Castle documentary where, watching a film by William Castle at home isn't going to do much for you.
The buzzing of the seats,
the buzzing of the seats.
Falling down.
But he knew that was a huge part. He knew that his films weren't enough. Like you could just get the sense he knew that the film on its own is not enough. So I have to be a showman and add that thing. Hitchcock knew that, and his films are enough. But
I have this weird dream of mine that I want to buy a theater like in the movie Matinee, and I want to actually do that entire thing. I want to have the shit falling from the ceilings and the
There's
seats
about
buzzing.
15 really rundown ones downtown. If you don't mind like some stabbings in the front, you're fine.
No, please. That's the culture. It'll be great.
I've seen those photos of the porn theaters that are closed down and then they bring in the blue lights. Oh, some of the ugliest things you'll ever see in life.
I didn't even know those existed in downtown LA until a couple of weekends ago. We were at Scare LA and my mom, exactly. My mom really wanted to go to the Hispanic market that's down there. And so we drove from Scare LA, which was at LA Mart, to the Hispanic market. And we drove through this one strip where there were literally like 10 closed down. And I can't even call them theaters. They were like the movie palaces where it's got like the ginormous marquee and everything. And they were huge operatic buildings. And they're all closed down. And a couple of them were like turned into shoe depots and things like that.
And yet for some reason they're building an Alamo down there. I don't get it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why you do. I don't get why you do that. Yeah. If it was in Silver Lake, it would make total sense.
Yeah.
But I don't really understand what they're doing.
I swear, if it's not in the valley and I don't have to be there, I don't go.
Let me give you an example. One thing cool though, if you look at something like if you look at the Draft House and the Austin Draft House, it makes going to the movies fun. Now, I'm not talking about their festivals they have, but Tim League, who programs that, always has something weird or unique or fun, and it makes me want to go out and see movies when I'm there because there's something fun. And I wish that, again, that's why I get so angry about some of these chains. It's like you're walking into a carbon copy theater and it's stiff and it's uninviting and it's unfriendly. And I think that's not helping filmmakers.
And projecting is getting worse and worse. I mean, some of the digital even though some of them are great, if it's a good place, if you go to a shitty place with digital projection, sometimes it's
that's why I think
it looks worse than what I would project.
That's why I think I didn't like Lovely Molly. I swear I saw a bad projection of it.
I like that film.
I can't watch it again. Yeah, it was that
film?
bad.
What is
Lovely Molly?
Eduardo Sanchez.
Oh yeah, I saw that at TIFF.
I liked it. I liked it. I thought it was intense.
I saw it at Chinese Gromans on Hollywood Boulevard.
I didn't even realize it was released.
It got a couple
really
weeks.
Small theatrical, but the print I saw, the screening, it was so dark. I had no idea what was going on at any time. Like there was a nudity scene, and all I saw was nipples. And I mean, it was like it just.
What else is
they kind of glowed in the moonlight, but the majority of the film, it was just so dark. And so I gave it this scathing review and talked about how bad it was, and that all around me are these people like, "Oh no, it's fantastic. What's wrong with you?" And it was just so dark.
Can I just go off on a side tangent about what you're just saying? When I saw Pacific Rim, I saw it at a theater in New Orleans, and I was so excited, as everyone else was, when we show up there. And the theater was one of these theaters that don't take pride in itself. And so it had two blown out speakers. And one of the blown out speakers was in the surrounds, and it was a constant hiss going on the entire thing. The other one was the center channel speaker. So you have the center channel, and you're hearing this hiss. And I'm sitting there with some other film guys and we're livid. Like we're sitting there and I'm upset and I'm angry and I go out 3 or 4 times and I'm like, can someone do something? And I got the shrug. I got the, no one else is complaining about it.
Well, that's because it's like a 14-year-old guy who doesn't really care.
And again, I got so angry and so upset about, again, a theater where people are congregating for this experience and you don't have enough pride in what you're doing and you're going to have these blown, and obviously that's been that way for some time. That didn't just happen with that one theater. So again, another reason why I don't like going to theaters that much is
I'm super picky about theaters because of that. I mean,
favorite theater
all
in
the
LA?
ones back in LA. Well, I love New Beverly just because they show cool stuff that I like too, and usually the audience there is like my kind of audience. They get into it. They know not to laugh over everything and kind of but no, I go to ArcLight. I know it's more expensive, but I like the assigned seating.
You know what you're going to get.
It's
I love
not,
that.
and it's not like the Friday night teenage audience that doesn't give a crap about what they're seeing.
And
you're paying a little extra money because you want to be there and see that movie in the best possible presentation.
If a cell phone goes off, everybody in the theater is going to ostracize you.
Yeah.
I like the setting at ArcLight more, and they have really good lobster mac and cheese in that little cafe off to the side beforehand.
I try to only watch films at the Atakoff screening room. Because the one time I went, they gave me fried chicken, and I just keep going back.
What the hell did you screen? Every single time I go.
Rubber and Hobo with a Shotgun. I remember they actually served fried chicken between the films.
That is insane.
It's a terrible place because there's no incline, so you can't see over people's heads. It's a tiny little.
Every single time I've gone to Atakoff, they won't even let you bring in like bottled water. They'll be like, "There's mints at the reception afterwards." I never go to that one.
They treated me like a god. I'll be honest, a golden god.
I always do the Sunset screening room or the ones whenever they do them at the Warner Brothers studio, because there you can take in like whatever the hell, Henry's Tacos or whatever you want to eat.
If Rob's being quieter than usual, it's because he's still in a birthday glow. He had this epic birthday weekend.
Actually, I'm kind of sleepy.
Yeah, I think he's hardly required.
I'm kind of sleepy and the beer's not helping for the first time ever. No, I didn't even get to see anything because
Can I crack this one open?
Yeah, brought an extra one for you, man.
Well, you did get to see one film from a previous game.
Yes.
Which one?
On your birthday.
Better Off.
Oh, Better Off Dead. Yeah.
It was that sexy version of Cinderella we all watched.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. I mean, it's not a horror movie, but I guess I'll tell the whole experience was that
it's kind of a horror movie.
Our friend Mike Williamson, who was a guest on our show, had a print of Better Off Dead, which if you listen to the show, episode 17, we had Savage Steve Holland on. So we got to show it at Jump Cut Cafe for my birthday because Elric's a nice guy and let me do that.
And it does have some horror moments. Like the kid is kind of, he is definitely riffing. I definitely saw the horror riffs this time where I had him before Psycho music about mother, don't make mother displeased. Mm-hmm. There's some good stuff in there. Well, I wanted to talk about as we go to our topic. I noticed that your next was coming out this week, and I still haven't seen it. And people, for all intents, the reviews have been pretty off the charts for a home invasion film. So I wanted to discuss home invasion films.
Have you seen it yet?
Yeah, I did. I saw it a couple years ago in TIFF. Yeah, the same time I saw it.
A couple years ago, I love that. I love that about it. But
well, that's, you know what? I'll start off just if I can say something. Just that 2-year thing, which is crazy, is that when I saw the billboards for it, I was like, this was like I saw this years ago, not last year, like years ago about it. And I think that one of the things that sucks about being a filmmaker is you hear a movie. It doesn't come out. You hear about it on Bloody Disgusting or Shock or Icons of Fright, and then it's gone. You don't know what or Fangoria. Sorry.
You read about it in Fangoria.
Our Dread Central.
That was huge in the 80s, right?
What else I left? Rue Morgue. No. You hear about these things on a site, and you get excited for them, and then they fall off the map, and you're like, what happened? And it gets the stigma. It's like, oh, there must be something wrong with it. They must be back in reshoots. And sometimes it's not the case at all. I mean, you have like when I saw it, I really liked it. And then 2 years pass and you hear the rumblings. Now all of a sudden it's coming out. And it's crazy because a lot of films have that fate. And luckily Your Next was able to bounce back from it. That, you have that 2-year hiatus and you're, for a while there, it was like no one knew if it was going to come out. And now it's
Do we know why?
Yeah, I mean, I could give you a little bit of the insight. What happened was when Lionsgate picked it up and like almost immediately after they merged with Summit.
Yeah.
And at that point, Summit was more concerned about, well, we have one more Twilight movie to go and then this Hunger Games thing. So they were more focused on their bigger pictures and not really sure where to slot it. And then when they were going to put Your Next out, that Sam Raimi produced movie came out, The Possession, last August.
I thought that's what you were talking about. You were talking about the
Zurlowski one.
Yeah.
Possession came out. They had no competition. It did huge business, at least for considering the budget. And that's exactly when they're like, great, this slot next year, You're Next. So it's just, kind of...
So that's why I took that.
I'm glad it finally got something.
Well, and they're actually putting money into billboards and stuff, which is pretty remarkable for a film that was bought already made, not financed, and low budget.
It's crazy, and good for them. I mean, that's really unheard of.
Yeah, so, it's funny. I mean, I'm not being biased just because AJ's in it or anything, but
he's been on the show. Please listen to the AJ episode.
I think it was at Trivia Night. Somebody was coming around from Fangoria asking all the teams, "What's your favorite home invasion movie?"
Yep.
And going through whatever. And it got to me, and I said, "You're next." And everyone's like, "Bias." And I'm like, "No," because what you guys know about me is, I don't like home invasion.
All right,
movies.
so let me preface the topic before we get into this, because this is part of the. Okay, home invasion films have been around forever. Probably one of our easiest to spot primal fears. I have to say, for me, I'd never really had it till this last couple of weeks from moving, because I've lived in apartments forever, and you feel so safe. And we just moved 2 weeks ago into a house in not the best neighborhood, and I start seeing like teenagers and stuff driving like on their bikes, looking in through the fence. It's the first time in my life I've thought about this. Like every creak now I hear, I'm like, I wonder if
was that them? What was the movie?
Yeah, the French one.
Ills or Isles. Yeah.
So I can't say it has been a real fear of mine, but it has been in humanity. If our dream is Leave It to Beaver, to have the picket fence and 2 kids and blah blah blah,
it is ultimate horror. I've loved. I mean, you can go as far back as even Desperate Hours in the 50s.
Yes.
It started attached to that. Well, one of my favorite ones was a film called Lady in a Cage. James Caan's first film.
It's number one on my list.
Are you serious? Here you go. Sound of Jesus Christ Superstar in the Gym.
Did you guys just become BFF?
I know.
I think so.
Over the course of this hour.
I'll text you later.
Okay, so A Lady in a Cage was the first one that, for me, when I saw it, it's shocking for the time, and it's even shocking now. But this thing that everyone, when you want to feel safe, you surround yourself with things that are familiar to you. And in my case, it's my wife, my animals, my posters, my house. And to think that something horrific can break into what is so safe for you is terrifying. And to think that it happens all the time. This place that I used to be living right down the street from where I live now, there was a home invasion, and they found our neighbors zip tied up, passed out. They were knocked out. These people came in, zip tied them up, laid them in the living room, tied them together, and just basically stole all their shit over the course of a night.
Are you serious? You live in a nice neighborhood.
Well, this is my, not the house I live in now, my other house, but it's still only about a mile away.
That's insane.
And it was crazy because the next morning they cut them free and they were fine, luckily. But this happened in a pretty normal neighborhood, and these people got zip tied up, beaten down, and they terrorized them.
Yeah,
and I mean it really happens.
Yeah, when I say I don't like them, I didn't mean it exactly like there's certain home invasion films I don't like. It's one of my biggest fears, so I have the most trouble watching those movies. That and drowning. Those are my 2 fears, home invasion and drowning.
I'm working on a home invasion movie about drowning, so it's going to
great. We'll never see it.
With a really unhappy ending. Just for
and a couple musical
numbers. Did you have that when you were a kid, or is that something?
Yeah, I used to always, I don't know. I mean, maybe horror movies affected, but when I was really, really young, I lived in my house in New York. I was on the main floor, and I just, for some reason, I didn't have a curtain or something over my window, and in the middle of the night, I was always convinced that somebody was staring at me out the window. And I don't know if I dreamed it, or if maybe I lived in an okay neighborhood, but it was close enough where people easily could have been walking through my backyard and staring into my room. So I always had these weird messed up memories of people peeking in, which is why now I always have every curtain closed and I never have windows open or anything anywhere. I can't be, once I'm inside, I have to be completely inside with no visual of outside at all. Cool. Which is weird.
I'm sorry to sidebar. I just saw your shirt, and that might be one of the coolest shirts I've ever seen. It is a Beatles. What's that?
It's Abbey Road.
Abbey Road
with Kruger and
Slasher Road.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, actually.
Norman, Michael, Jason, and Freddie all.
Is that a Fright Rags?
No, it was. I can't remember what it was. It's one of those maybe it's like Shirt Punch. Where
cool.
they just do a random design every day on the site, and this was one I saw, and I was like, I have to own that. So.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail the whole conversation about it.
Well, I mean, for me, I don't know if home invasion so much as being powerless, being the male, if that's even important. But the idea that somebody could hold power. Well, if somebody took your wife and did something that you couldn't react to, or your kid, you realize that powerlessness to act.
There was a documentary on Netflix right now, and I just watched it. I love... documentaries to me, in some respects, are more disturbing when you actually see.
Right.
And there was a documentary, and I remember this happened right around the time that Mother's Day was coming out, and I remember that the producers and the distributor at the time all forwarded this link around, and it was the story about 2 inmates just got out of jail. They'd been out less than a year. They got together, and they broke into a guy's house, and they raped the kids. They knocked the dad out, thought he was dead, and they took the mother to a bank to make her get all the money out. And it was just like we did in Mother's Day. And they eventually set fire to the house. They poured gasoline on the kids, poured gasoline on her, set the house on fire. The dad got out while the house was on fire. And the documentary basically focuses on everyone's story, including the killers. They interview the killers. They interview the husband that made it. And it's terrifying. And, we made something sort of fictional with Mother's Day. It was based on some events, but you realize that really happens. These things really happen.
And what's terrifying about a documentary is when you do interview killers, and this is why we always need to keep the killers around for a while to get them to hear the stories before just getting rid of them, is to find out that they weren't evil people possessed by a demon. These are people often who are like, yeah, we just got together and thought it'd be fun. But they say things that are so banal.
That is crazy, because that's exactly what they did. You see one of the guys, and he seems quasi-normal, and you realize he had bad decisions in his life, and it escalated very quickly. They did not realize what they were going to be doing, and then when it started happening, it had gone too far to back out, so they carried it all the way. And to me, that's the most scary.
Yeah, it's scary. I remember seeing interviews with Jeffrey Dahmer after from prison, way back when, as a kid. It was on TV, and he was talking about the cannibalism part and the ritual that he went through, and he spoke about it in such normal way that as a young kid, I thought I didn't think he was like. I was like, why is he's just a normal person? Like, it really messed with my head because they're not. This doesn't exist. This archetype of evil, or the thing that we like to celebrate in horror films, because it's our way of entertaining ourselves, it really doesn't exist for the most part. It's usually banal face of something terrible.
Mother's Day was literally based on a movie called Wichita that a writer, Scott Milam, had written. And I'm from Kansas, and Wichita is a place in Kansas.
Isn't there a Bruce Springsteen song based on that as well?
On Wichita?
There's a Bruce Springsteen song called Wichita, which is based on the Killers. It's
Two Brothers?
The Two Brothers.
Are you serious? Mm-hmm. I did not know that. Well, this is a crazy...
It's a beautiful song. It's really slow. It's almost like a romantic song.
And Bruce Springsteen wrote a song about the Jersey Devil, so maybe Bruce Springsteen is my muse. And
I have to Google this now, but I know there's a song called Wichita. Before you tell your story
really quick, because one of the thing about Mother's Day is it affected me in a weird way, and like I said, home invasion is not exactly my sort of thing. But I think just in general, as horror fans, we're very sensitive, especially to violent, fucked up things. I looked up this case that inspired or was loosely inspired by Mother's Day, and I wish I never read it. It upset me so much more.
It is the worst thing I've ever read.
Reading about it, and it made me feel even worse about your movie, knowing that parts of it kind of came from that. Yeah. Does that make sense? It's just it because I'm sensitive, it affected me so deeply.
There was I don't know if I should. I guess it's enough time has passed. It's okay to talk about this. For a long time, I wanted to make this movie called Wichita, and it was one of those very personal things to me that I had to make. And the story of Wichita was a true story about what's called the Wichita Horror. You can Google the Wichita Horror, and you can read all about it. It's horrible.
I'm sorry. I'll interrupt really quick. His song's called Nebraska.
Oh, Nebraska. Okay.
And it's the same topic. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, two brothers around the Christmas holidays don't have a criminal record, are out driving around, and they're robbing houses because it's the most important. For criminals, Christmas is a huge time because there's Christmas presents under the tree. People spend a lot of money. And they were going in, and they'd find people that weren't home, and they'd break in their houses, and they would take the presents, and they'd keep going on. Well, they were, scouting houses, and this one house was empty, and they saw a Christmas tree, and they broke in the house, and they took the presents. And one of them was going through all the rooms, and then all of a sudden opened a door, and there's a Christmas party going on in this house. And they didn't realize it at the time. Immediately what happened is these people that are in the house try to run. They see this guy with the gun, they try to run, and this guy's freaking out and accidentally kills one of them. True story. And now the brother comes running out. It's like, you idiot, you've just killed someone. We can't let them go. Now we're going to go to jail for the rest of our lives. So they decide to basically torment and torture them for the rest of the night. And they were going to burn the house down, which is why this story that just happened was so shocking. And it gets worse. And I don't want to get into it because it really is some dark stuff. But you realize, and these things are real. They really do happen. I think to me, that's why I get so, scared by home invasion stuff, and they affect me more than movies like Nightmare on Elm Street. Those are fun. Those are like escapes, whatever. I don't think home invasion movies are fun. I can't name a fun home. Maybe Your Next might be the first fun home invasion movie.
The only thing
The Ref. Come on, guys.
Home Alone.
Okay, if we're going to count those as home invasion movies, yes. Okay.
But I'll tell you this. One of the reasons I think they're also popular and a cool thing about them, the positive about them, I think, is when we have a camper in Friday the 13th, he is on Jason's turf. The whole point of home invasion is the final character, if there is going to be a final character, if it's not made by you and somebody actually survives, they're on home court. They have the home court, and that's kind of fun. So it does open as a film, and I'm not talking about the true stories, which are only tend to end darkly, but in film, this person has the home court, and I think that's a really cool thing. It's like their stomping ground, and they can then use that, like Audrey Hepburn, Wait Until Dark or something. They can then use that to their advantage, and I think that's one of the reasons I think people do enjoy it as a genre.
See, I haven't seen enough then, because every time I watch a home invasion movie, the thing that frustrates me is that they never like fight back.
Watch
aggression scale.
Aggression scale is a good one for that.
Okay.
I'm going to say something regarding the fighting back. I remember I got in a fight on set with an amazing actor, guy Frank Grillo. Frank Grillo's blowing up. Guy's amazing.
Yeah, he's good.
So Frank gets in a fight with me. It was probably one of the first times I've ever had an actor actually just say, no, I'm not going to do that to me. And I was talking, and I said, okay, here's what you have to do. You're going to get hit, and you're going to pass out, and then you're going to cower. And he was like, I'm not going to do that. And I'm like, no, you have to. And he's like, no. He's like, I'm going to fight back. I'm sick and tired of people getting hit around and not doing anything. And then you have to stop. And I said, Frank, you've had weeks to read the script, prep for what you were going to do. This just happened right now. You're playing pool, the door is kicked in, and they're coming in and pistol whipping. You don't have time. And I think that's the thing is, we can evaluate, and we can think, what would we do in these situations? This is a story about the house that you have seen. My wife and I moved into our house the very first night. Very first night we lived there.
Oh, you told me about this.
We came back a day early from Devil's Carnival. So we were supposed to end on Devil's Carnival on a Monday night, and we came home Sunday night. So that was the first day that we moved in this house, and all of our equipment, all of my computers and my screening room stuff arrived that Sunday. We weren't supposed to be there. We go home, we go into our place, we're sleeping on the ground, and all of a sudden we hear something. We hear something coming from the front of the house, and my assistant was also staying there, comes running in, Darren, someone's in your house, someone's in your house. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I didn't believe him. I'm groggy. I open up the door, and there's 3 dudes, and they're standing basically right at the front of my thing. They're all wearing black. And I immediately hit the panic button on our house. The alarm goes off. They take off running. They jump in their car, and they screech around. Now, I'm thinking, what would have happened if they would have opened the door and seen us asleep? I'm sure it was an inside job, because how would they know we weren't going to be there that night?
Yeah.
But it was the most terrifying experience of my life, because
what if there hadn't been an alarm?
Exactly. What would have happened? And I think that I didn't know what to do. I got so scared and freaked out. I think I'm this tough dude, or at least I pretend to be. I literally cower. I was like, dude, there's 3 guys in my house. What do I do? And I think that that's the thing, is when we watch these movies, I think you can sit and think, what would you do? And you have time to pontificate. Well, I would use this, and I'd use this, and I'd use this.
Right.
My favorite home invasion movies, and there's a ton of them, are the ones that take place immediately. There's no setup to it. It's the door breaks in, and the characters have to deal with it right then. And so, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off on that, but my own.
Not at all.
Well, one that is exactly that. We were talking about our favorites. I don't even using words favorites is one thing. I'd say what's effective. Like, to me, a horror film doesn't always have to be something you like. It can be something that effectively disturbs you. In the last couple of years, I think it was 2 years ago, I saw Kidnapped, the Spanish
2010.
film. Yeah, Miguel Vivas. And the way he used long takes and film form to really get under your skin. I mean, it just has the couple, the mother and the father talking, and in the background you see a window, and suddenly the window smashes in one take. These people come in, and from there, and it's unrelenting. Mm-hmm. And it's been badly dubbed into English on one of the. Don't watch that one if you can get a chance. Watch it with the subtitles. But it was so unrelenting. I didn't like that movie, but I was, affected by that movie, and it really. I mean, I thought filmmaking wise, especially, it really had this very strong sensibility. And so it's like, you see some of these films, Funny Games obviously is a key film in the genre, because it's also commenting on the genre, what I mean? While it's winking at the audience, saying, you're part of this. Like, as an audience, you're complicit in this, What are some of the ones that you found most effective? So we don't have to talk about likes or dislikes, but what films have kind of disturbed or disrupted you?
I think Funny Games and both versions did, because they are pretty bleak. I mean, when I say bleak, meaning without spoiling it, what happens? Well, I guess you can't not spoiler it.
I think you can talk about the first one. We'll just tell them spoilers. Don't listen for the next minute if you haven't seen Funny Games. What are you going to do if you haven't watched it for 10 years?
Well, no one's safe, and I think that's the thing. They're just going to kill. They're killing the kids, doing all that kind of stuff. No one's safe. I mean, I really like Strangers as well for different reasons. Sometimes Strangers gets hate, but they were so reserved in what they did until the very end, and I think that was cool, because there was some violence before that, but basically the last minute of that movie it affected me. It did. And I also love how I love masks when done properly because there's no sympathy, there's no caring, there's no anger. They're blank. They're blank, expressionless things. And I think to me that was one where it really worked.
Do you guys find it more frightening? And this is something that I found kind of split the home invasion subgenre was the purposeful break-in or the purposeless. So the people like in The Strangers who go just because we can. Or something like that, or Inside, where it's like, I'm here because I want the baby that is in your belly, because I deserve it. Like which one, I feel like it really splits almost every one of them if you watch it. It's either we're here for the money, or we're here because we can commit violence, and my name's Krug.
I think too, exactly. I think to me, it's the purposeless one, because it's harder to... There's a small fraction of hope if they broke in for something. Give them the money and they're going to leave. Do this and they're going to leave. But on these other ones, why'd you pick us? Because you were home. I mean, there's no reasoning. There's no talking to them. There's no whatever.
Right.
The example I always think of for the purposeless one is Clockwork Orange, where there's nothing they could have done to get them to leave. Nothing they could have given them. It just doesn't matter. So that's always kind of the more terrifying because there's no rationale to it.
Right.
For some reason, I find the purposeful one scary because I don't know why. I feel because I know what their goal is, and I agree in general with horror completely, because that's why Halloween works so well. But there is something about home invasions when I know what they want that I often do find that kind of disturbing because, like you said, how will you defend yourself? One that's not really horror, but the one scene in Rolling Thunder, I think is the best scene I've ever seen with home invasion, where they just take this guy who was super masculine, who could defend, and if anyone could defend themselves, it's William Devane in that film. And they just grab him and shove his arm down a garbage disposal unit and take off his hand. And you're just like, it's horrifying. And for no real, besides, we're going to take I think the reason I find the purposeful is it's so shallow.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to take a few gold coins, so we're going to do this to you.
Yeah.
That equation is just, it's
for me, it's like at least the ones that are purposeful, I at least can find entertaining, because at least I can almost put at least there's a reason behind it. Like I can understand and all. And the thing is, for me, movies are escapism. I don't want to think about real shit that happens in real life. I don't like real violence and stuff like that. So anytime it's purposeless, that scares me, because I know that happens in real life. And it's like, I don't want to think about that when I'm at a movie. I just want to have, I just want to escape this sort of thing and have fun with it, or something like that. You know what I mean? That's why I like Your Next, is because it's one of the first few where and it's a female character, no less, that kicks ass. And it's like,
Spoilers.
Somebody's fighting back. That's not a spoiler.
I've been avoiding
ads now.
I've been avoiding this too.
Those out there have not seen, one of my favorite though, we mentioned it earlier, but was Lady in a Cage. And I think because it hangs itself on a gimmick, and the gimmick is a woman who's, I think, has a broken hip, is caught between the third floor and the first floor as these band of misfits break into her house. And so she's stuck, suspended above them as all these terrible things are happening, and she can't get down. It's James Caan's first film. If you've not seen it, I highly recommend it. It's pretty vicious.
Yeah, it is. It's 1964, and considering the time period, it's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
One of the most grisly, and I was just remembering, it's not a good film. And not in my opinion, it's not a good film, but it's obviously a riff-off, Last House on the Left, is House on the Edge of the Park. Where it goes is just so grisly and hard to watch, and you're like, what is this even a movie? At a certain point, they do things that just... It's almost like performance art or something.
When I was in college, and this is when I was doing my master's, the film department worked with the psychology department, and we were doing these studies of how people who don't like horror films respond to them. And we showed them the scene from that where she enjoys the rape, which is the weirdest performance. I can't even begin to describe that scene.
Which movie is this?
House at the Edge of the Park. It's Krug,
Ruggero
isn't it?
Yeah, it's Krug. But I was also thinking...
It is Krug,
and he's pretty much playing the same character.
That you just mentioned right there, Straw Dogs, the scene in Straw Dogs.
Yeah, and that's another one.
That was another one that really disturbed me.
But that's complex. And this is one that people always go, she enjoyed the rape, but it's actually more complicated because it's an ex-boyfriend who she was basically inviting. It's then when a second guy jumps in that it gets weird.
But in House at the Edge of the Park, I mean, it's like, I can't even take it seriously.
Yeah,
but
it's a little silly, but
some people find it to be just the most disturbing thing ever.
Well, and there was times where home invasion and rape and home invasion together were just used like nothing in a movie. Like I was watching the Death Wish 2 and 3 the other day.
Oh, yeah.
And it's treated so lightly. Like, he literally walks down the street. Some guy goes, "Hey, man, nice mustache," or something like that. And then they're like, "Hey, let's follow him home, invade him, and rape his family." You're like, "What?" You know what I mean? It's
There's
like
a Larry Cohen film. I'm trying to remember.
Bone, his first film.
That's
yeah,
it. Same concept.
Yeah, it is. And that's a good film, though. But he's playing with it. Larry Cohen, the reason why he's elevated filmmaking compared to most of these guys is because he's always satire in everything he does.
And he was satirizing race in that, too.
Yeah, exactly.
I
He's a smart, filmmaker on that level. But, and then, you know what, another film that I was thinking about on the way here that made me laugh, I was thinking about Home Invasion. There's the role reversal Home Invasion, People Under the Stairs, where the good guys break into the house, but then they're stuck in the house.
Can't get out.
Which is, it's a very weird, but
do you know what I watched recently that I never even considered a home invasion, but it absolutely is a home invasion, is Panic Room.
Oh, yeah.
Totally. It is.
Oh,
I never thought of that way, but it absolutely is what it is.
I need to see that again, because when it was in theaters, it's like the only Fincher film I didn't love. It's the only first one where I was like, Yeah. There was just something about it that was missing for me. Maybe it was the characters. Maybe I didn't care for them.
It had this weird kind of tongue-in-cheek element, too, because the character, there was like this aha moment at the end that was kind of a punch-out ending. It has some campiness to it.
It also could be that it suits exploitation and lower budget filmmaking because, like you said, you don't know if there's rules. Will the kids get killed? When I watch Jodie Foster,
and Kristen
she's
Stewart,
not going anywhere.
Everyone's safe, and I know that. I felt like the Purge. My biggest issue with the Purge, which I only saw last week and I was mentioning, my biggest problem is that it is a home invasion film. The concept of the Purge is so glorious and such a fun idea.
Yeah.
Why waste it on a home invasion film? Like, that could have been set in an office building, could have been set anywhere on that day.
Oh, the
and
sequel.
It would have been fascinating. Yeah, exactly.
You just gave Jason Blum the sequel. There you go.
I already did last week.
He pitched it last week.
My pitch was, what was that? When you turn 18, you have to kill someone on that day. So that way everyone's complicit. I like that idea.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool. But,
one that I wanted to mention, and it's weird because I actually did not like the movie at all, but it did the home invasion element really well. Silent House. Have you guys seen it?
Yeah.
It was the one with one of the Olsens, not one of the twins. Why can't I remember her name?
Elizabeth Olsen.
Yeah, the good looking
And
one.
it was such a gimmick film because it was like filmed all in one shot. And that was supposed to be the gimmick behind it, was that it was filmed all in one shot. That part was really boring and almost made it painful to watch because they were really pushing that. So like you're watching her run around the house and through the woods and they're trying to get it all in one shot with this digital camera and it's dropping frames and it was just painful. But the film is about a home invasion. And in that sense, it actually did a really good job. Had they just focused on the damn home invasion, it would have been a great movie.
Have you seen the original Spanish version?
I have, and I felt the exact same way. The Spanish version had a different ending.
Okay.
Slightly.
I haven't seen either.
It just shows you how much that movie stayed with me. I don't remember anything about the movie. I saw it. I don't remember it, though.
All I remember is there were cuts, even though they're trying to make it look like there weren't cuts.
It was, the whole concept of the movie, for those of you guys who haven't seen it, because it really did kind of fall asleep. Like, I went to a press screening. They showed it on this big, huge screen because they wanted everybody to see that it was all filmed in one cut, and the big, huge screen just made it painful because it was like watching Blair Witch, but with a lot more movement. But the concept is that Elizabeth Olsen and her dad are in this old house in the woods, and they're trying to renovate the house, and her uncle's there too. And eventually she's in one of the rooms, and it's a huge house, and she's cleaning it up, and she hears somebody come in, and she thinks it's her dad or her uncle, and neither of them are there to be found, but other people are in the house now.
Well, also there was incest. She starts having memories of her incest by the parent.
And one of her friends from childhood showed up at some point. So there was a lot of kind of possibilities of what it could be. And then the ending was a kind of punch out to me, like you saw it coming the whole way. But the home invasion element was really good because it did have a lot of really good suspenseful moments while she was in different scenarios trying to escape the captors that were there.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, it was one of those films where everyone would keep saying, "Hey, niece. Hey, uncle. Hey, dad. Hey, daughter." For like literally 40 minutes, you're like, "Yeah, I think we got it."
And I was so pissed off.
Screenwriter.
I was so pissed off by the gimmick because it was like, if you have a good film, you don't have to film it all in one shot. So, yeah. But anyways, so that's one that it's worth checking out just for the home invasion element.
I mean, what's the most disturbed you've been from? Is there a particular home invasion where you're like, "Oh man, that was the one"?
Joe Pesci's hair got caught on fire in the first Home Alone.
The paint can
That's as disturbing as it gets.
Yeah. Can you think of one, or is it just generally
the idea? No, it's so weird because it's like I know I've seen Straw Dogs, but it's almost like I put them out of my mind as soon as I see them because I think I just don't want to remember them. So I've seen stuff like Straw Dogs, and I did like The Strangers a lot. I only saw it once, and I did think it was effective, but part of that I think is the gimmick of the masks, like because then it may, I don't want to say that
more playful.
Yeah, well, it's not playful. It's still unpleasant. But then all of a sudden, it gives it some kind of like iconic, some kind of iconic image that is associated with the movie. So it's like now you see those masks and you immediately think of that movie.
Well, that's why I think
that's
why I think Strangers worked so well, and I think it did so well as well, because there is an iconic image from Strangers, and it's the three people in the masks. And on this, you have the animal masks, and You're Next. And You're Next is fun. I mean, it really is. I think that. You're right. I don't think Mother's Day is a fun movie. I don't think you're not going to sit there and high five people when you're watching it. It's not that kind of movie. But
unless you see it with Des Moines.
Unless you see it with Des Moines. You know what's funny?
I'd buy the shit out of that.
Do you know what's funny about, maybe not funny at all, maybe she'll hate me for saying this, but she is so anti-violence, and we actually had to do scenes, literally block scenes where she would not see any violence in her peripheral vision. She would not walk on set if there was blood on set. If there was anything violent happening in front of her, we had to do a body double over her. Oh, wow. So when she saw the movie for the first time, she was not happy because she doesn't like violence. And I'm like, well, you read the script, but she's not a...
Interesting.
Yeah.
And did she see like the early cut of the movie?
No, the thing which is really bad is that she didn't see. I don't think she saw it until she went to Sitges. We premiered it in Sitges, and the entire time we're over, like, she's like, "Oh, it's not that violent, is it? You play most of it off screen." Well, you know why? Is because when I originally was going to make Mother's Day, my gimmick, what I wanted to do is shoot it like a Disney film. My whole idea originally with Scott and I were going to do is not show anything, show absolutely nothing, shoot everything like if you were really watching a Disney film. It was going to be bright colors. It was going to be fluid shots. It was going to be beautiful. And you were still going to do everything, but it was all going to be played on everyone else's reaction. Everything was just going to be sound design. I thought it was an awesome idea, and then no one else went for it. So we had to.
Rob would have greenlit that, right?
Yeah, I would have.
How awesome that it takes something ultra violent and shoot it literally as if it was a kid's film. You're watching like a Teletubbies thing. I think that would have been awesome.
Well, to me, the most effective stuff is when you're not exactly seeing it and you got the right sound design and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like some of the most disturbing home invasion films for me are like Hitchcock's, where you get into like the Dial M for Murder or Wrong Number was a really good one.
I love Dial M for Murder.
I'll
give you that one.
Okay. So,
I think one of the most effective, the whole film isn't, but this part of the film is hugely effective. And unfortunately, you realize later on it's probably just a dream or a fantasy, is High Tension. When he goes in, that's scary stuff. And the gore effects are done so well and organically. But now you watch it a second time, you realize, that's probably part of her sexual fantasy where she's losing herself. But
and it just dawned on me, Rob, that one of your favorite films is a home invasion film, Black Christmas.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It is.
Well, you could go further and say all supernatural haunting movies are effectively home invasions with the supernatural.
That's true.
Ooh.
And I think that's pretty interesting when you think about it, because it's playing on the same fears.
It is.
This is our house. This is my stuff. This is Darren's posters and his wife. And yet now there's this ghost.
Same thing with aliens.
It's the fighting back angle. Like whether it's home invasion or not, like at least if there's like a Freddy or Jason dude, like I know I'm not going to survive, but at least I could try. Whereas if it's like a supernatural ghost, like there's just nothing I could do about it. I'm fucked.
Right.
I'm haunted. That's, I can't fight that thing back.
Exorcism.
Exorcism.
Well, I'm not religious, so
you hire one.
You move.
It's like a taxi.
I have to mention one film, which my husband and I argued for about an hour this afternoon on if it was a home invasion film, but it's one that Elric and I are big fans of, Candy Snatchers.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we were
discussing. You not mention this yet.
Well, because on the way here, I started to realize that I was talking to her about it. Oh, I'm excited, and I know Darren likes it too. And then on the way here, I realized, or is it just a kidnapping movie?
It's just a kidnapping movie.
Do they ever go into the house?
No, because they pick her up on the way home from school, and then the house that they take her to is not actually.
It's not hers.
It's not hers.
So it's a kidnapping subject.
So
but it's an awesome film. Let's talk about it anyway.
Let's talk about it. I love that movie.
I think we talked about this last time, but one of my favorite just weird moments in a horror movie recently was I think it was Cabin Fever. It was the blonde kid. There was like pancakes.
Well, that was a trivia question from last week.
Was it really?
Yeah.
I would have gotten that one right. But that the kid, almost identical, the blonde kid in Candy Snatchers, who's the weird kid that doesn't. I think it's the director's son.
Supposed to be autistic.
Yeah, I think it's the director's son, Jordan Trueblood's son. I think I heard that in the commentary. But this reminded me of that Eli Roth, because I just watched that again, the Pancake Kid. Now, I love Candy Snatchers, and that was the weirdest moment, I think, where I actually got called out on something. I've talked about this on the Trailers from Hell, where I did one on it. I was at a party, and it was like one of my first Hollywood parties, and Quentin Tarantino was sitting next to me, and I was trying to like be cool, and he was like talking about his favorite movies, and I was like, oh yeah, I saw that. And he was like, you've seen Candy Snatchers? I was like, oh yeah, it's my favorite movie. I've never seen it. And he goes, what did you two? I never met Tarantino in my life. He's like, so what did you respond to with it? And I was like, the awesome characters. And he's like, yeah, awesome character. And he goes off for like 10 minutes. And luckily didn't call. And I was like, shit, I better go home and watch Candy Snatchers now in case I ever run into him again.
I've talked to Tarantino about Candy Snatchers too.
He said it was one of the best. He said it was one of the best scripts, not the best films. He goes, but it's one of the best scripts ever written.
Really?
And he kept saying that over and over and over again.
I think there's awesome shots in it is the thing. There's so many shots in that for me are like cinematic photographs. Like the three of them in the car
with the faces
on and the trees reflected on them, distorting it. I could take a picture of that. There's another scene where they're burying her in the ground and you just see a hand.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's
great.
just, there's so many cinematic moments in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen the film.
You've never seen it? We gotta get a screen. We gotta find a print and do a screen.
Yeah, that would be cool. Maybe I'm 16.
I own a DVD of it, if that counts. I think it's an import.
We'll call Tarantino. I'm sure he's got one in his vast.
Here's a good question. Films like
collection.
that, it's shocking to me that hasn't been remade, even if I was a studio, even just the title, because it's such a great title. But I've thought about that one for quite. Yeah, The Mutilator. There's certain titles that I wonder how difficult. I mean, while we have you here, might as well ask you, pick your brain. How hard is it to track down the rights to remake a film like that?
Here's the problem. It's not that it's you're dealing with the chain of title, which is going to be that movie. Candy Snatchers had a distributor. It has a writer, a director that probably saw his claim into it, the production company that put it up. So you're not dealing with just going into a library and buying one film. That was not a popular at the time. It was not a hugely popular film. So the chain of title is probably going to be pretty murky. It's one thing, like if you're going to go try to remake an old Warner Brothers film, because the chain of title is with Warner Brothers. On a movie like that, I'm not sure even who released it.
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it hasn't even got a really great DVD release. I think
no,
it's
mine's an import.
Yeah, import.
Yeah, and so I think that dealing with that, it's could it be done? Absolutely. But it's dealing with the chain. I mean, there's a lot of movies I've tried to get the rights to, and it just literally, it's years and years and years. There's an Alfred Hitchcock Presents that I've tried to get the rights to for a long, long time. And I thought it'd be easy because that was just thinking going into a library, but it's not. You have to go back to the original writer. You have to do whatever. So getting rights to something could be hard, and that might be just one that's murky.
So when you did Mother's Day, I mean, I'm assuming you had to get the rights for it. Did you have to go through Trauma, or they hold rights to it, right?
I called Lloyd on a cell phone. It was like, no, that one was weird. Brett Ratner had the rights because of Lloyd. He was a huge fan of it, and Ratner called. He said, hey, I got the rights to this movie called Mother's Day. And obviously I'd seen Mother's Day a million times growing up. And
I liked the Ruby reference.
Yeah. Not Ruby.
The kid. Why can't I remember the name? It was the girl from the original.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of.
I thought it was Ruby.
You're talking about the thing that lives behind the. Oh my God! Why did you just say that? It's not Ruby. It's
Ruby is Hills Have Eyes. I'm confusing it.
Yeah, there is something that lives behind. I can't even think of it.
I'm gonna look it up as soon
Please,
as I
oh my God,
this.
Queenie.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know what's crazy about Mother's Day? There's a lot of references from the original film, a lot, and we just played them seriously. Where Trauma played them completely over the top. I would say 25 lines from the original movie, like full-on lines. So we just played them completely straight, where they play them completely.
Wow, I've seen the original so much, and the only one I caught was the Queenie reference.
Now there's a lot of if you watch it again, the punk rock or disco sucks. There's a lot of that stuff in there. We just play it serious. Who were you asking me about getting rights? Yeah, it's sometimes it's very easy. With Mother's Day, it was very easy. You call Lloyd Kaufman up, and he talks to his brother Charles, who directed it, and they say sure. You call other places, and you're dealing with it for years and years and years and years.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's something that most people don't understand. I think most people would think it's the opposite. Like, to remake The Unholy would be easy. To remake Exorcist would be impossible. Yeah. But it probably isn't right. That's interesting.
I remember interviewing Lloyd Kaufman years and years ago for Icons of Fright, and him saying, I mean, sometimes you can't tell if he's being serious or not, because that's just the way he is. But he said, and he was totally serious when he was saying, he's like, yeah, Brett Ratner wants to remake Trauma titles now. And we're like, which ones? And he's like, well, a couple, but Mother's Day. And like, we ran that, and not a single horror site believed us. I even remember like Brad from Bloody Disgusting being like, yeah, whatever. And then like, cut to 6 months later when
they're redoing
he was doing Mother's Day. It's like, I was like, scoop. Brett Ratner's remaking Mother's Day.
When I was on the set of Mother's Day, they were talking about remaking Toxic Avenger, and I was like, there's no way in hell anyone's making Toxic Avenger. No. Then I hear now they got Schwarzenegger's on it.
Rumor has it, yeah.
I guess crazier things have happened.
I know. If that, I don't know. We'll see if once it actually happens.
But Lloyd's not making it this time. It's just somebody else who has purchased it.
And Schwarzenegger is not our Schwarzenegger anymore. He's post-Governor Schwarzenegger. That's a different person. That's not a movie star anymore.
Doesn't count as much.
So let's. I'm curious what you've been working on, because we know that you were down in New Orleans for a while.
Yes, a graphic novel that I put out with Radical is being made into a movie. It was supposed to go about a month ago, and we had to push it. So I'm going back there next month, back to New Orleans to finish the movie. Doing that, and I'm really excited by that. It's I can't give a lot about it away, but I've always wanted to make a haunted house movie, but every kind of haunted house movie has been made, and I don't want to be, a carbon copy of something else. So for years, I've been trying to figure out how is a new spin on a haunted house. How can you make something that people haven't seen before? And we came up with this idea, Abattoir. And so it's my version of a haunted house movie, which is hopefully completely unique and different. So we're making that. And then also working with, I think, a friend of the show, Ryan Turek, and Jared Rivett's film Sacrilege.
Who has also been on our show. Jared's been on,
Jared's
right?
on.
Yeah, that was the week I was
So-
giving birth.
Do you know what's crazy about that whole, the sacrilege of it all? That script came to me maybe 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and I never read it. And I remember my agent calling me and said, you should really read this thing. It's pretty cool. And I was in the middle of shooting something. It was probably Mother's Day, and I never read it. And then it came to me again from my manager, and it said, hey, you really need to read this script. And at that point, I was probably doing 11/11. And then finally, Ryan Turek shows up to my house with these other producers, Shawnee, and goes, you're reading this right now. We're not leaving until you read it. And so finally, the third time, I was like, I better read this thing. And I loved it. It has a lot of home invasion elements. It's not a home invasion film, but it definitely has that, in a familiar environment, very, very bad things happening to you. So those two movies are what's going on next. And in the meantime, Terrence and I are putting together Devil's Carnival 2. We're cast up. We have some really cool surprises about who's going to be in it this time. The one that I'm most excited about, I'm going to kind of break, I guess I can kind of break it here, but the person that we're talking to, I'm not going to say he's in it yet, that I'm really excited with is Ted Neely, who, as we were talking before, is Jesus from
Jesus Christ.
I'm going to let you sing it.
Superstar.
My favorite movie of all time is not The Exorcist or The Shining, which I love dearly, but it's Jesus Christ Superstar. And so to be working with that would be the equivalent of me getting to work with a Jack Nicholson of Shining. But it's that's really exciting. So those are the three things I'm doing, but definitely Abattoir this year.
Cool.
That's great. What is the story? What's the plot behind Abattoir?
I'll tell you what the comic book is. I can tell you that, and it's kind of a continuation. It's basically the story of a man, Jebediah Crone, who for hundreds of years have been showing up to crime scenes, and those crime scenes could be murders, rapes, suicides, natural causes, accidental deaths. He buys the house and then rips the room out in which the death occurred. So you basically, since 1800s, have been buying houses and ripping the rooms out, and it's about the investigation to find what he's doing with these rooms and where he's using them.
Oh, creepy.
So
that's really,
that's a really cool concept.
And you wouldn't get that from the title. The title, I was thinking like a slaughterhouse or something.
No, and it's cool. The tagline I think we're using for the movie is, how do you build a haunted house? And you can kind of piece it together from what he's doing.
One room at a time.
Yeah, one room at a time.
Yeah,
that's it. And I think it's cool because from a visual standpoint as a director, you're not dealing with a house of all the same rooms. You're dealing with a room from the 1800s and then a French chalet from the 1900s, then a Victorian room, whatever, and he's smashing these rooms together to build like a Rubik's Cube haunted house.
Oh, that's cool.
Wow. That is cool.
It's like Cube or something. Yeah,
wow.
So and I recommend checking the comic book out as well. Radical put it out, and they put out also Oblivion, which that was their first movie, and they're in production on their second movie now, which is the Brett Ratner Hercules, and Abattoir is the third film. So they've been doing pretty well.
How does the comic book tie into the movie version?
The comic book deals with the same character of Crone, but when I went in and pitched the idea, it was huge, and there was no way we could have ever done it as a movie. So we decided to kind of compartmentalize it out and do the comic book, which is basically the lead into the movie of kind
like
of
a prequel sort of.
Yeah, and then the movie, and then we're doing web-series and a bunch of other things that's going to tie into the world. But you can. The book deals with the kind of backstory of Jebediah Crone.
Cool. Yeah, because I'm familiar, like most of your films, most of them, and not 11, are dealing in the real world, more or less, with extreme, violence or the kind of things we've been talking about today, things you can't control, but that are real. So I'm curious, how do you view the supernatural? Are you somebody who kind of semi-believes? Have you ever had an experience where you walked into something and couldn't explain it? Or
I'm in love with the supernatural. It's my absolute favorite thing, the occult and the supernatural. That being said, I am cautiously optimistic that an experience will happen to me that I can actually point. Here's my problem with the supernatural is that we live in an age of digital technology, that everyone has a camera and a very nice camera, and we all have microphones around us and have whatever. Then why can't one of these apparitions appear that they can clearly be captured on video, clearly. And when everyone's excuse is, oh, well, they don't let themselves be seen on video.
But everyone knows they're analog.
Well, they're analog, exactly. But my thing is, then show it to me in a group of 100 people. If there is an event, why does it only happen to one person one time? Do it in front of lots of people. That being said, I absolutely wished something would happen. So do I believe in it? Yes, I do. Has it happened to me? I had some crazy experiences while making 11/11, and I think this is maybe one of the reasons that I'm not happy with 11/11 is I let what was going on personally affect the movie. We shot in what I consider to be the most horrific haunted place that I've ever been into.
Where'd you guys shoot?
In Barcelona on the Mediterranean Sea. And there's some behind the scenes that we started putting out, and then we stopped putting them out because it seemed like a gimmick and it didn't seem real. It seemed like we were staging shit. We weren't. And it was basically the crew got violently ill. Producers were quitting right and left after seeing what they called demonios, which is demons over there. People, the script supervisor reported a woman hanging from the ceiling. We pulled the deed of the house, and we really did this. We pulled the deed of the house and found out there were 3 deaths that took place in the last 25 years in the house. A bunch of crazy things happened, but it was a feeling of just utter dread when you walked in. Like and it really screwed with me. It did. It really screwed with me because it was the first time that I actually challenged what I believed in. I went in there not believing in anything, and I left 11/11 absolutely believing.
I remember you posting footage like on Facebook and stuff. Like there was one outtake where there were 2 characters talking up front,
the windows,
and in the background, like the windows.
Black, That's the problem. That all this stuff happened. We have hundreds. We have so much footage, but everyone thought it was a gimmick and we were faking it, so we'd stop putting it out. Like it's all real. Like the one that I think the craziest one that I can talk about was the house was owned by a cult before we went into it called Umo. And it's a real cult, and you can look it up. And they had basically bricked over parts of the house, and you can see brand new brick when you'd walk in there. And they had Umo symbols, which is this like weird age. And we asked the landlord or the guy that owned it, what's behind these walls? And he says something that does not need to be uncovered. And he said, basically, let sleeping dogs lie. Those were noises. We heard noises coming out of the things. There's a moment in the behind the scenes, it's on the DVD, where you see us put the camera back there and you can see altars and weird. I mean, it's crazy. That was probably the craziest supernatural thing that I've been a part of.
Wow.
That and sacrificing small animals at our house, but that's another story.
That's just for the weekends and for fun.
Yeah, that is.
It's interesting how I think everyone's perspective that when you say you want somebody to experience it in a group, it seems like it's only people who don't want to have those kind of experiences who ever experience, like just very normal people who aren't interested in movies have these. My mom, who's like a total unbeliever, told me a story when I was a kid, and it's always stayed with me because she didn't believe and because she was not looking for it. She tells me a story, so I cannot not believe when I hear a story like that. You know, it's just you've had any? Not personally, no.
Rob?
I don't think so. Again, it's like I always have these vague memories as a little kid, but I can't now as an adult. I can't differentiate if it was stuff that actually happened or if I dreamed it.
Yep. I have the same thing.
That's the weird thing. Like
that's a question. But I have a question. If something did happen to you, if right now you were sitting here and something popped up on the table and says, "I am Lucifer, I am Baal," whatever it says,
Terrence killed.
Do you write it off as a hallucination because of a bad taco you just ate, or do you actually accept what you've seen?
See, I would be more inclined to say it was a hallucination because I had a reaction to medicine a couple of years ago and I actually hallucinated. And there was some weird shit going on. And instead, I was able to say, "Dave, I think I'm hallucinating." I didn't say like, somebody's breaking into the door. It was able to say I'm hallucinating. It's a weird thing.
I would do that too. Just because if I accept that it might be something supernatural, then I feel like I'm opening myself up to that sort of thing. And I don't want to get possessed by anything. Yeah. So I pretend I'm like, nope, don't buy it. Don't believe it.
But like Rob, I have very vivid memories. My grandfather died when I was very, very young. I was like 5. And grandfather on one side did. And I have very vivid memories of him coming to me and talking to me while I was laying in bed one night and telling me a story. And it was after he died. And for some reason, I have very vivid memories of this. And I now, as an adult, look back and say, you know what, I was probably sleeping and just dreamed the whole thing. But when I was a kid, I 100% believe, I even told my parents, I was like, yeah, Grandpa came and talked to me last night.
Here's a little ghost story to maybe a quick one that I used to live in a 3-story house in Kansas. And on the 3rd story was a unfinished and finished attic. So 2/3 of it was finished, 1/3 was unfinished. There was a closet that separated the finished from the unfinished. And basically, you'd put your clothes up and there was a little door. And if you opened the door, there was basically the exposed beams and insulation. My parents would put Halloween decorations and Christmas decorations up there. Well, I moved up there when I was in 5th grade, and I remember always hearing noises coming from the attic. I was terrified I heard noises. The most vivid memory I ever had as a kid, and I've eventually set up and sold a screenplay based on this. And again, it's one of these things, it's not an exaggeration. I remember it was my 5th grade year going into 6th grade. I remember that I had my alarm set for 6 a.m. because I had to get up and get ready to go to school for the first day. And I woke up before the alarm went off, and I looked over to the side of my bed, and I saw someone on their hands and knees crawling into my closet, actually on their hands and knees. And I remember screaming at the top of my lungs. My dad comes running up, and I said, something is in my closet, something is in my closet. My dad is like, we've told you there's no such thing as monsters or ghosts. Took the flashlight out and opened the closet up, opened the hatch, and there was nothing there. So let's cut to 15 years. This memory has haunted me. As a kid, I always go back to the guy's face, what he looked at, telling me to go shh. And everyone thinks it was crazy. Every time I tell the story, oh, you made that up. I go back home 2 years ago to my parents' house. They've long since moved. And they had our old next door neighbors over. Our old next door neighbors who used to live there. Now, these are very religious people in their 70s now. And they're sitting there and they said, Darren, you used to live on the 3rd floor, right? And I said, yeah. And they said, did you live in the attic? And I said, yes. They said, did you live in the unfinished part of the attic? And I said, no. Why would you ask me that? That's a weird question. She said, because the people who bought the house after your parents did had us moving stuff into the unfinished part of the attic. And while they were moving stuff in, they found a cot back there that someone had tapped into the electricity, and there were magazines. And I said, what magazines? They said, from 1981 to 1986. So someone was living in the attic from 1981 to 1986. And I remember that now. I convinced myself it was a ghost or it was something.
Oh my God.
And now I found out that it was real. Someone was living in our attic.
Holy shit.
Oh my God.
That's creepy.
People
as
on the
hell.
stair stop.
I know. It was yeah.
Chills the entire time.
That is
Hopefully the movie I'm doing of it will do it. But it is terrifying because for years I've put together what that was and why they were doing it and was it real or was it not real, and to find confirmation that it actually happened.
And I wonder where that person
that's the problem.
What they were.
That's the problem is I'll never know, and that's what kind of makes it hard for me is that my parents left there and it's been 15 years, 16 years.
Yeah.
I'll never know who that person was. It just knowing that I did see it and I was a kid and I remember it.
Oh my gosh.
You guys just missed out who didn't listen this far into the show. If on Friday you didn't get this far, you just missed out. We're going to tell people to watch. Yeah, that's really well. That's a good. I think that's a good place to get news.
Yeah,
we can't top that.
Yeah.
We don't because as this we're taping this show a little bit early this week. I'm
Don't
lifting the veil. I'm lifting the veil. We're taping the show a little bit earlier than usual this week, and
someone has to go out of town.
We didn't have too much occur. Well, and plus my parents were in town, and Wednesday's their last night, and they were like, "We want to take you out for a nice dinner," and I shouldn't say that mockingly. I'd like to go with them. So, yeah. But so it was just the weekend. So the big news for this week, Rob G had a birthday party and a really big TV.
That's already
that was news.
But I will say, because I didn't get to talk about what I watched at the beginning of the show, I watched I Come in Peace.
Yes.
Also known as Dark Angel.
That. You know how I feel about that movie.
I Come in Peace. Have you ever seen it?
I Come in Peace. Okay,
Yes.
yeah, Dolph Lundgren,
It also released under the name Dark Angel.
I pre-ordered my copy on Blu-ray.
I got a Jeff Nelson hooked me up last week, and nobody else grabbed that one last week when he brought a stack.
It, but I already ordered it.
So I grabbed that one, and so I took it home that night. And my husband was immediately like, he's such a huge fan of the film Stone Cold, and it's by the same people. So he was like, "Holy fuck, you got," or "Holy crap," whatever I can say on air. You got this movie, and so we watched it that night.
And did you love it or what?
It's amazing,
absolutely
there you go. Amazing.
Told you,
it is amazing.
This is the one you talked about in the first couple episodes, right?
Yeah,
a long time ago.
Yeah,
I love it.
But did you? It struck me only because I watched Liquid Sky for a FEARnet article a couple of months ago. The plot is almost identical to Liquid Sky. It is aliens who come, inject people with heroin, and then suck out the chemical that their brain makes while they're on heroin. Yeah. It's the same concept of Liquid Sky. And I was suddenly like, I wonder if the people from Liquid Sky know this. So I've uncovered a conspiracy.
Yeah. I saw Liquid Sky way later, but I Come in Peace was but it's funnier than
it's
Liquid
hilarious.
Sky, so
It's hilarious.
What does everyone make of the J.J. Abrams trailer that released today? Is it a horror film? Is it a series?
Yeah, which one?
It's something like
The Stranger. It's a new one.
I saw an image from it with the sewn mouth.
The sewn mouth shut.
It looked like a Soul sequel.
That's what I did.
But it's Abrams, so I'm going to assume it's smart.
I know.
Huh.
Well, I have to go check that out because I have not seen
smart, Becca?
No, I didn't mean that. I'm just saying that
her.
Many torture films I don't consider smart. I consider them aping on torture films that came previously. But I don't think J.J. Abrams would stoop to that level. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt at this point and assume that it's got a secondary motive than just making another torture film.
And totally, are there more Saw films? Is that going to happen? I mean, not. If you know saying you're not allowed to say, don't say anything. But I'm just curious. Is that
me speaking? Not being one of the Saw directors, I think absolutely yes. I mean, look how much money the franchise has made.
Yeah.
Inevitable.
Would you, if you went back to something like that, would you want to continue what they're doing, or really reinvent from the kind of the feeling and the idea of why his pay it forward kind of system, make just a whole new thing with that?
If Lionsgate ever wants to hear my pitch, I have a pitch for Saw.
Are they on 8 or 9
now? Are they on 8? Yeah.
Yeah, this would be the 8th one.
Yeah.
I don't remember the last one was.
No, I think what made Saw so unique, and I think where it kind of failed towards the end, is it became it regurgitated itself.
Time,
and it was imitating itself each time. And I think what made the first few Saw films, they were unique, they were different, they changed the game every single time. So I think you'd have to go back to the well and change it again and do something completely different. You couldn't pick up where they left off.
It feels to me like remember when Halloween went off the rails, even though it didn't.
Halloween 3?
Yeah, no, Halloween 3 is great.
That was my favorite.
Halloween 3 was
That's my
awesome.
favorite.
But the idea behind Halloween 3, which I still think is brilliant, which is that every Christmas they would release a new Halloween film.
Halloween.
That would be different.
Halloween.
And it could be anything. What did I say, Halloween?
Christmas.
Okay, sorry. But I was thinking maybe I could imagine a Saw franchise that's like that, where each time it's not a continuing story. Each time it's that idea, but done within a unique world, Who knows? It could be interesting. Did I give away 2 pitches today?
I think you did.
All right, good. That's fine.
I miss the Saw movies every year, to be honest.
I do too.
I missed it when,
big
up until the last
tradition.
one. Up until the last, I just couldn't even watch that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it has to be smart. I mean, no one needs to watch torture.
I think
ever
the
again.
problem became is that it became too hard on everyone because we were trying to one up each other. And it became harder. Like, I just pulled a guy apart on a bed and like ripped his arms. What do I do next? I just twisted a dude. What do I do next? It became so. And I mean, there were the traps. I mean, I've said they got ridiculous towards the end because I think we were so under the gun. We were doing them every year.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
like
hard to
literally every single year.
Well, I mean, for almost a whole decade, you guys owned Halloween. I mean, Saw was Halloween.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Saw 2 and 3 was easier to do because at that point there really wasn't any pressure. It was like, oh, this is cool, and there was not. But then we got into Saw 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. There was pressure on us because now we had built ourselves up and we were this new thing, and we had to. So I think they will come back. I think they had to take a break to kind of just everyone to catch their breath and come up with some new original ideas. So
I heard Paranormal too, like the yearly thing, definitely caught up to them too after about the third one.
Yeah,
right?
I'm anxious to see what's going to take it now because for a while, I mean, it was Saw and then Paranormal came in and kind of swooped in and they were Halloween for now. But then last year, I think Paranormal kind of dipped. So I'm anxious to see what the next
another
thing is.
interesting thing.
And their next one isn't until next year now. Like they're missing their October
Yeah, they
date.
missed it for that reason. But it is interesting to think what is going to franchise next. Like, what are people looking? Yeah,
Insidious 3, sure. Conjuring 2.
But without James, right? So that's the thing. And will they then lose their power after, he's gone from those franchises? Do you know if Insidious 2 was the end game, or were they thinking just...
I don't think that question is up for filmmakers anymore. Maybe before it used to be. It's up to the studios because you're now dealing with big business. You're not dealing with these small arty films. I mean, it's a juggernaut. Yeah. So I think
you could always find a way back, regardless if the filmmaker's like, this is how we end it.
We killed Jigsaw 3.
How many times did we kill Jason? And I'd be like, we really killed him this time. No, he's back. He's back. We found a way.
When you killed Jigsaw at the end of 3, did you realistically think like, they can't do another one at this point? Or?
No, we did. And, I remember it was a huge battle for me to be able to do that. And it literally was a war for us to do it. They wanted to shoot it 2 different ways, where he didn't really get his throat slit and one where he did. And I fought with Tobin, no, we're going to do this. And then literally, I think maybe 2 months later, they said, well, you just dug your own grave because you got to come back and figure out how to do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that was... But I think that's also cool is I think that if you're going to make a franchise, you can't think about the next one. You got to think, what can I do to make this one amazing? Right. This one has to be amazing. We'll deal with the other things later. There's always a way back in. I mean, there always, specifically in horror, if we're doing a drama or something, no. But with horror, you can always find a way back in with flashbacks or...
And making a prequel and going...
Prequel or twin brothers or...
Yeah,
they do the same in soap operas. He was in a coma the whole time. Yeah. Twin brothers.
Is there before we wrap up? Is there anything you're looking forward to later this year, horror wise?
Well, I mean, you're hitting my favorite time of the year right now, which is the haunts. You know, I grew up in Kansas City where they had the coolest, biggest, most elaborate haunted houses.
Yeah, my brother lives there now, and he tells me to
they're huge. And in fact, I've never seen one that's ever paralleled a Kansas City haunted house. None of the Universal Horror mazes do. Wow. Because they are so elaborate, and they literally take hours to go through.
My husband always told me the same thing. He grew up in Derby, which is right next to Kansas City, and I always was like, "Really, Kansas City?"
No, it was insane.
You're justifying
it.
There's
no way to describe it. I've tried telling other people about it. Literally, you spend $40 to $50 to go through 2 hours, and it is hundreds of actors, not like 5 or 10, hundreds of actors. And I wanted to do a documentary for a long time on them until these, like the American Haunt, and there was another documentary that's coming out that did it. But they would spend millions of dollars per haunted house. They would start 6 months in advance. And so they were, but I love all haunted houses. I mean, I'm really looking forward to the Purge event that Blum's doing with the Blackout guys. I don't know if you guys done Blackout.
Mm-hmm. I did in New York City. They had one there.
I did it twice now. But I just like anything like that. I mean, I like the twisted and the macabre. So here is a season that will celebrate that. So I'm looking forward to the haunts. Delusions. You guys do that?
I haven't done Delusion.
Delusion's amazing.
I sent an intern last year. I may have to try it myself this year.
It's
she
great.
said it was amazing.
It's great. It's literally a 3-act play that you're interacting with the actors and you're part of it, but it takes place in a haunted house. But you're part of the haunted house. It's great. Mm-hmm. That was, to me,
really cool.
I think to me it was the coolest one of all of them I did last year. Mm-hmm. Neil Patrick Harris is one of the producers of it, but I recommend Delusion.
Wow.
I liked Blumhouse of Horror last year. That was pretty.
But you know, I liked it as well, and it's kind of what they do that, but even more, because Blumhouse of Horror, there was a story, and you kind of went in groups and saw people acting it out. But Delusion is the same thing, except literally there's a 90-page script or story, and you take a part in it. So you don't even realize it, but you were playing a part in the story. And there's stunts, and like people are falling off 4-story buildings and getting pulled through doors. It's cool.
Wow. Are they doing Blumhouse of Horror again this year?
They are. The Purge.
It's the Purge, yeah.
Oh, wow.
The Blackout. They hired the Blackout guys to do the Purge. And so it takes place with the Blackout dudes, which means it's going to be more intense, I think, than
I'm surprised they're coming back. I heard, and this is purely rumors, but I heard they didn't do well financially with the haunted house last year.
The Blumhouse?
Yeah.
I think they're changing up the formula of how they did it quite a bit. I mean, I think it's taking place at the same place. It's in the same location. They're just changing how they're doing it.
What are some of the new Universal Horror Nights ones? I know
Insidious.
Evil Dead.
They're doing an Insidious.
What's the rock and roll one? The 3D one. It's
They've been sending me emails all week. I should have paid attention to them. I know that the Insidious one was the big one.
I heard in Orlando, in the Orlando one, they're doing Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, cool. Cabin in the Woods.
That
in
was
Orlando,
one of them. Yeah,
and American Werewolf in London, I believe, is.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I'm pulling up my email right now to see if anything else. I know that the big one is the Insidious one, and they've been sending us press stuff on it all week. So
that should be fun.
Yeah, I'm assuming that it's going to be similar to what they had at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Where we actually got to walk through it was like supposed to be an Insidious haunted house, but they set up and it was like Insidious sets, and we ended up just drinking there. But it was really cool and creepy.
Anything's got to be better than Goratorium. I felt ripped off. I felt so ripped off.
Well,
it was expensive. It lasted for only a couple minutes, and it was based on how good are these actors going to be, and if they're phoning it in, which I think mine were. It was a lame experience. I mean, it had a couple nice sets, a nice elevator set that was really fun, but I was really surprised given how much money had been put into that.
Well, they declared bankruptcy, but then they also said that there was another company that stepped in and was bailing them out. But what's weird is there's a really, really, really well done haunted house in Las Vegas called the Fright Dome. And so I'm surprised that they're trying to compete with it.
I like ones that are kind of amateur because they're dangerous. They feel more dangerous and scary, like anything could go wrong.
Could catch fire at any minute.
I tried finding a story and I couldn't find it because I thought it was an urban legend, but then someone else said they heard the same thing. So Kansas City has like 8 or 9 main haunted houses, and there was one called Dr. Deadly's Haunted Hospital. And it was one of those that only one person goes in at a time, and there's a 10-minute window on either side of you. And they get your ID, so they know your name. So they're talking to you by name as you're going through it. And I remember when I was growing up in high school, there was a newspaper article that it was big, it's in a very kind of dangerous part of Kansas City, they all take place downtown, that there was a gangland stabbing that took place in Dr. Deadly's. And so the guy got stabbed, he survived, but he got stabbed. And he lost so much blood, he passed out. So people are just walking over this dude in the haunted house. And then eventually when the haunted house ended, lights went on, like they realized that guy is not part of the act and picked him up and got him to the hospital.
Wow.
We need to do a haunted house episode, but I learned my fear in a haunted house. One of them, I was touring this haunted house in Michigan for Fango. They'd flown me out there to tour this haunted house called Erebus. And Erebus's big thing is that they bury you alive, that you will actually be buried alive in the haunted house. And they prepare you for it, and they're telling you, like, don't freak out. You will be able to breathe. You will be able to breathe. And they put you in a room. And the room is like 10 feet tall. And they fill the room with these tiny little plastic balls. And it's kind of like what you would see at like a Chuck E. Cheese ball pit, but much, much smaller. And they fill the room. And you hear them filling. Like, I'm only 5'2". You hear 5 feet worth of them dropping on you above your head. And they leave you there like that. Terrifying. Terrifying. And I've never actually been scared in a haunted house before. I've just been like, that shocked me. But that time I was actually like, I'm pretty fucking freaked out right now.
The last haunted house I went to in Kansas City is this thing called The Beast, and it was really bad. My dad and I, it was a thing we did every year. So my dad and I went, when I went on my 10th high school reunion, I flew back to Kansas City, and I said to my dad, let's go to The Beast. And my dad's getting up there in age, and he agreed, and we went. And we eventually had to do what's called like a safety, where we had to ask to get out, because what they do is they have 2 football fields, literally 2 football field size warehouses that are together, and they fog it out, and there's trees in there, and basically there's one exit. There's only one. So imagine if you're in the middle of a football field, there are trees everywhere in it. It's all fogged out. There's only one way out of it. And so we eventually were in there for about an hour to an hour and a half, and my dad started like hyperventilating and doing whatever. And we eventually, hour and a half stuck trying to find, that was only one part of the haunted house.
Is it like a maze?
Yeah, but this wasn't a maze. This is a huge open field, but you have no concept. When you can't see anything, you're getting turned around. And there's only one exit. So what you would normally do is go find a wall and follow the wall all the way around.
On the left.
But
they touch the left side.
They stop it, so you can't do that. They'll literally put things where you cannot go all the way around. And so after about an hour and a half, we had to do a safety to get out of there. We couldn't figure out how to get out.
Oh my God.
These are intense. They're not jokes.
I want to try that. Right. I really do.
Well, we have a few weeks before the haunts start up again.
Yeah, Igor Awards. That's when they get all the critics drunk and let us walk through all the haunts at Universal. Yeah. So it's good times.
Of the year.
Hell yeah.
All right.
Well, we're gonna check out check out Abattoir. So if you can, don't go to the Goratorium. Take Abattoir instead. And by this time next week, I will have finally seen You're Next after having interviewed AJ Bowen 2 years ago about this film. I've been wanting to see this film, so I'm going to see it this weekend.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago,
I'll
exactly.
also plug this Sunday night. There is a screening at Jump Cut Cafe for Harold's Going Stiff.
An erotic kind of hot, sexy movie?
Yeah, no, not
just
at
an
all.
erotic.
It's a very dry British horror film, but it's good.
Zombie film. Yeah, it's got right now. It's got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it was out like The Guardian and everything saying this is. It's kind of like it sounds like it's Warm Bodies but serious.
What's it called?
British.
Freddy's Going Stiff?
Harold's Going
Stiff. And it's meant to be, I guess an older guy thinking he's becoming a zombie. But yeah, people are saying it's a really good indie, and we're doing the premiere of it. They're in the LA screening, I think.
Please go see it. Fango will be there giving away good stuff, and I'll be there eating a hot chicken wrap.
Right on.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much to Darren Bousman for coming in. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me.
A fun, wacky chat about haunted stuff.
And you heard it here first that Saw 10 will be coming out soon by Darren. Don't forget.
Yes.
He announced it here. Ratings to shoot soon.
Go check out You're Next. It's officially out now. There you go.
Woot.
Thanks, guys.